Welcome to STEPS Podcast. Thank you so much for listening in every single week. As you guys know, I have a different guest who will come on the show and talk about all things ADU, all things multifamily, all things real estate investment strategies. And I'm very selective of who I have on. These are very highly vetted individuals, highly experienced people who have a lot of knowledge and a lot of value to bring to you guys every single week. If you have someone who you think might be a good fit for the show, make sure you guys reach out to me. And another way to stay connected, I know that some of you guys are listening in every single week on the podcast, and you may not know that I do have my active YouTube channel where I'm always sharing other sorts of tips and tricks on what I'm actively doing on myself as an ADU strategist and consultant and investor. And then also, make sure you guys reach out and follow me on Instagram, StepSellsADU. I constantly have different content on there showcasing a lot of what the strategies that we're talking about on this podcast, whether it's midterm, ADUs, multifamily, acquisitions, you name it, just property management, mom life, all the things. Make sure you guys follow me on there so we can continue to cultivate this relationship. Now enjoy this episode, and I'll see you on the next one. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and also my podcast. This is episode 77, and I'm here with Daria, very special guest who I actually met at one of my meetups. And so we'll get into that, but I'll give you guys a little bit more backstory on who she is, sort of her background, and then we'll dive into another ADU conversation because, as you guys know, every single week, I'm bringing someone who specializes somehow in the ADU world or is, participating in it. So Daria is an interior designer and architect who uses her expertise to create stylish, functional spaces throughout her company, through her company, Bone Interiors. And she's based out of Los Angeles. She specializes in blending design and technology to deliver this sort of modern type of style and impactful solutions. In addition to design, Daria is actively investing in real estate, which we'll dive into. She's leveraging, obviously, her architectural background to identify and enhance high potential properties, which is a very good skill set to have as an investor. And with that, I'll hand it off to Daria and we could start there. I was actually mentioning how we met, which I thought was very interesting because you were one of the few that came to the event, or the meetup, I should say, from Eventbrite. So that told me a lot about your personality, like showing up to an event when you don't know anyone and you just so happen to come across it online. And that says a lot about like you just being super proactive to really get to know people that are hyper local to your market. So that was awesome.
Hi, Steph. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure. I'm super happy to meet you. It's always important to meet, when you network, sometimes you meet those people who are super connectors. And I think you're one of them because they know everybody, they know the industry, and they can connect you to virtually anyone in this space. And I personally think that networking is one of the best ways to grow your business because it's based on relationships and based on trust.
Right.
It's difficult to gain someone's trust or show your expertise via cold emailing. So I'm
exactly
in-person conversation. But I mentioned to you, I'm fairly new to LA. I've only been here for a year. I moved here from Europe where I had my degree. And I started working in architecture and interior design. And there are obviously some similarities and differences in how architecture and design is approached. So once you actually come into the US, specifically in the LA market, with the kind of skill set that is very applicable and very contextual in Europe, and you start applying your knowledge here, you understand that there's a lot of not only cultural, but also industry differences that sometimes can be beneficial, sometimes detrimental to the final result. One of them, I think, unfortunately, we can witness with the LA fires and the America's fixation on building only with wood construction. Not only, I should say, but it's primarily
common.
yeah, it's 98% possibly of the market. Um, and it's obviously efficient and fast. However, it's not the only way. And I think it's a long awaited revolution or evolution of the market
Mhm.
that we have to witness. And that's why for me it's interesting to kind of introduce different or alternative builds to my clients and see their reaction, right? Because some of the people are really open to that, some of them are not as much. um,
Right.
and even the name, like alternative build, sounds very hippie, right?
Yeah. People
Just
are just they're not as open minded. I mean, I think to your point, with everything that's happening with the LA fires, I would like to see alternative options, right? Like obviously traditional stick build is not working, specifically in those areas. Even all these, areas that are in high fire hazard types of areas, why would you rebuild the Pacific Palisades or Altadena stick build again, right? Like this is something that can happen again. So I would definitely hope that that's a lot of people are a lot more open minded. So I think that's a good topic to tap into, right? Because I've talked to people about alternative types of build outs. But for the most part, people go with what they know, with this, which is traditional. This is what they feel comfortable with. They don't understand the pros and cons of it. And quite honestly, most investors and homeowners who want to build these ADUs don't have a whole lot of construction background. So it really comes, you really have to come from an educational standpoint to show them the benefits of this alternative type of build that you're offering, right? So, which takes me to, I'd say the first question is SABS building system, right? And just kind of going over that with people to give them an overview. And then, yeah, see if hopefully we can help change some minds here.
Yeah, so basically, how I came up to know SABS built-in system, which is an American system. It has been developed by Mr. Saabi in Arizona, I think around 50 years ago. Surprisingly, hasn't made it to California yet, even considering that Arizona is quite close. It's a neighboring market essentially, but um, how I got to know it was via networking. Again, funnily enough, I've met a woman, an entrepreneur, who got acquainted with the system and decided to develop and increase its existence in California, and kind of getting to know more architects, spreading the word, hosting workshops, hosting trainings for contractors, for builders, for architects,
Mhm.
to get them familiarized with the system, which was way before the LA fires, I think around half a year before. So, funnily enough, or I guess ironically, I don't know, I don't know if it's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Um, uh, Now is a good time to get to know it, which basically it is a very simple system. It is the EPS blocks that are the insulation blocks that are used to create this structure of walls and roof. So very similarly to how wood is the main material for stick build, the EPS blocks are the one material of the SAP system. The difference is that EPS blocks do not burn, and they only can melt within certain temperatures, but essentially when they're protected by stucco or by sapscrete, their patented mix, um, they are not susceptible to fire. They're given a Class A safety category, so they're very safe in terms of fires, very safe in terms of earthquake, because the structure itself is holding itself. There's no a particular bearing wall. All the walls are bearing the weight equally. Um,
Okay.
and because the EPS blocks are 98% air, it's foam, um, it is also very light, right? So because it's light, there you don't need a lot of people to get it together. That's why they hold all these workshops teaching people how to build it, because essentially an owner builder can do it themselves.
Right, exactly. Now, just to give people a visual of what that kind of looks like, I may be able to put that in the episode so people get a visual of what this. It's almost like a structural insulated panel, but slightly different, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll definitely make sure that we add a clip so people can get a sense of what that type of build is like. And I would hope that it does kind of make its way around to, from Arizona to California. I wonder if you've seen a lot of these types of builds for ADUs in Arizona now that Arizona allows for ADUs.
Actually, yes, it has been a growing market, and we're currently, I think, have two ADUs are in progress in Adelanto, and I think two more are coming. One of them in Santa Monica, another one in Reseda. Um,
Okay.
so, and for ADU, this is one of the great ways to build it because it's cheaper, it's faster, and it can be somewhat modular, right? You
When you
can.
say cheaper, let's give people like some rough numbers. So let's say a 500 square foot ADU, what would be the average price for something like that?
Well, I would say that if we're talking about only shell and core, so let's say stucco cover outside and inside, the rough construction, including
Mhm.
plumbing and electrical, we can fit into $180 per square foot.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, right now I'd say average is about 250 to 350 for stick build, and now it's getting closer to 350.
Yeah,
And with the craziness that's happening politically, right? Which I don't really like to get into politics and religion, but it's hard to ignore. Like I was talking to a builder yesterday who, one of them brings a lot of their stuff from India, and the other one from Mexico. And I was like asking, a lot of these are prefab models that they ship over and then they build on site here. And if these tariffs that were supposed to come into play do come into play, like that throws off all these numbers. And that's one of the things I was talking about in the last episode is with this high demand of the LA fires and all these people being displaced, you're going to have this influx of people wanting to submit for their ADU because you can build the ADU before building the main home. But then that's also going to cause a higher increase of demand and supply that we don't have enough of already. Plus, to tackle on the tariffs, I see the prices of these ADUs going up. So, how have you guys thought of probably hedging against inflation for some of these situations, if that was the case?
well, you see, for example, in the case of SABS, the tariffs, in a way, are cutting off the competition because
Right,
the
right,
system is an American system. It is fast
exactly.
in America, and it is a local product, including the EBS phone, which is produced wildly in the US. So it does not influence the cost, which I think gives a great competitive advantage and kind of saves
100%.
yeah, kind of helps you to not get involved with the tariffs. In terms of labor, it is difficult. We expect the labor to go up in price, especially because of like you mentioned,
Everything else, yeah.
workers, construction workers are
And I
ex-
think one thing I've seen an issue with too is finding people who can actually install these on site, right? There's a shortage, I think, of good subcontractors, let alone contractors who understand how to assemble these types of builds. But I mean, the fact that you guys are saving so much on the build out costs, I think the labor, even if you do increase it a little bit, it kind of helps offset, tariffs and other expenses like that. So that's definitely a plus. I think you guys should definitely tap into that, and they can reach out to you directly. I don't think we said you. Well, I said you're based out of LA, but you basically service LA, Orange County, like all
yeah,
the
correct.
SoCal, right?
Yeah. I'm working everywhere. I like
Yeah,
to know every city because there's a lot of cities. Is one of those differences, right? Of LA
right.
comparison to other cities is that it has many faces, and I'd love to explore each one. But yeah, in terms of SAP system, if anybody's interested, they can reach out to me. I can connect you if you're a contractor. I can connect you to Nazrin, who runs this company here. If you want to get trained, if you want to get to know more about the system, please reach out. I'll be happy to spread the word for sure.
Definitely. Okay, so now we've pretty much talked about that alternative type of build. And another thing I wanted to pick your brain on was I do a lot of midterm rentals, and
Mhm.
I know some of the listeners do short term rentals as well. What are some of these like design, hacks that you would consider for a midterm rental model versus a long term? Because I actually do both. The property management company that I work for out of Huntington Beach, we manage over 700 properties. A lot of those people want to build ADUs. So we're building with the thought of having a long term
Mhm.
tenant. But then I have, 8 units in Hermosa Beach that are all midterm rentals. And so the thought pattern for that is a lot different. So, in terms of functionality for each type of avatar, what are some things that you'd consider? And yeah, anything else that you'd like to input on that
Mhm.
would be of value.
Well, I think the most important difference is basically have a different customer, right? For
Right.
short-term rental, the emphasis goes on design a lot because you need to stand out on the market. If you scroll through Airbnb, you see how everything has to look bright and attractive and kind of popping, and it has to have this, I don't know, pictures on the wall and IKEA design or whatever. If you want to stand out, your property has to have a vibe in a way, right? And if you notice, a lot of super hosts usually have a property that stands out, not only because of their service and the quality of the service that they provide, but also in terms of visuals. So that's what we focus on. And I think it's a universal truth for both US and European market, possibly even more in touristic areas. So, for example, if you go for short term rentals, I don't know, south of Spain, you have more of kind of like, oh, we have a really stylish apartment, and that attracts a customer. When we're talking about midterm rentals, we're talking about people who travel frequently and they have a little bit of different set of needs. Usually those are travel nurses, traveling professionals, lawyers, and what they need is slightly different. They come and they focus on work, so we usually focus on providing a proper workspace, providing proper storage. But we don't focus, for example, that much on kitchen appliances and having a full functioning kitchen with a stove and everything. We focus more on having something very simple like a microwave, a kettle, like basic kind of things. I focus more on having a comfortable bed, good shower, proper amount of storage, good accessibility, possibly some outside space if that's possible. In terms of long-term rentals, you go in different direction again because you have to focus on long-term living. So it has to be basically a house, which a house needs a proper kitchen, right? Even
Right.
a lot of people don't cook that much in the US, a proper kitchen is a must in every ADU. And you notice that if your ADU doesn't kind of have the proper setup, it scores lower on the market, and people are always interested. Oh, do you have enough storage space? Do you have a washer dryer? Do you have this full functioning kitchen? Where do I put my clothes? My Where do my kids' toys go? Like all of this functioning thing that you need in single family home, they're just
Mhm.
applicable for small ADUs, and you have to be creative with how do you manage this to happen, right? You add those extra storage units on top of the bed, in the hallway. You add some extra units. You utilize all the space, even though your ADU is 750 square foot, right?
Right. Right.
So this is a kind of a different story. You don't focus on design that much because it's not that much about design. People bring their own personality. You want to be more universal, more kind of you're providing a canvas and
Right.
you're providing a lot of utility. Um,
I agree. I think you wear different hats for all three different types of avatars because, yeah, short terms, definite, and midterms even they're a lot on what the unit, how it's designed, what are some of the amenities that come with it. You're definitely wearing your, what is it, your host type of hat on, right? You're no longer a landlord who just has a long-term tenant. you are in the hospitality business, so you have to cater to both avatars, both short term and midterm, as someone who's going to stay at your hotel, and you're definitely shooting for that good review. So you have to accommodate to their needs. Whereas with long term, I would say you don't have to do that so much, but you should still consider, if you want a long-term tenant to stay for at least 3 to 5 years on average, then when you're building an ADU, I always advise like to do higher ceilings from 8 to 10, even 9 foot ceilings make a huge difference. If the ADU sits behind the main home, you don't want the neighbor in the ADU or the tenant in the ADU to open their window and look at the neighbor in the front. So maybe doing some capped-in windows, higher windows, definitely give it that good feel. It still has a lot of natural light coming in, but you have privacy. Taking into consideration a small yard space for that long-term tenant, because they do want to feel like they're at home, and like you said, they want to sort of create their own style to it. But offering amenities like yard and parking with these ADUs are definitely a plus for, I would say, for both, but specifically for long term. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because I mean, you have to understand your client's needs, and then work away from it, right? If you
Right.
only on what is more efficient for you cost wise at the moment, then you're possibly losing a potential income in the future. So
Right.
it's not that much of about a cost per square foot. Sometimes that's more about, okay, I'm investing in this ADU, I'm investing in my own property, how do I increase its value? Because you can have an ADU that's, if it's badly designed, then it's not a good investment, simply said. And
Right.
you want to avoid that by all means.
It's important to hire somebody with that experience. And you have a lot of experience, as you said, even though you're new to LA County, SoCal, in general, you have a lot of experience. And I see here you invested, and we talked about it a little bit at our meetup, but I was all over the place. I didn't get a chance to talk to you and hear more about your investments. And I'm curious to know, before you tell us like where you invest and, give us like a overview of that. I'm curious to know, what does the ADU play look like in Europe? Is there such a thing? I'm assuming there is, but they probably don't call them ADUs. And I'm assuming that it is a popular thing in high dense areas, but I've never lived there, right? So hearing it from your perspective, what does the ADU theme look like in Europe?
Well, I actually gotta admit to you that ADU is very novel concept in terms of Europe. In general, the style of building, the city planning is very different, right? So they're very focused on density already, so they don't have a problem with kind of like sprawling city and sprawling suburbs like we have sometimes in LA. So we have to build a
Mhm.
neighborhood to kind of add the density to the area. Europe usually has the opposite problem. It's overly dense. So the
Mm,
houses and ADUs only come in play whether you have like a bigger property, say like ranch style, or a single family house with big land. That's when you're starting to consider those things. Or if you're converting, for example, say an old agricultural estate into a hotel style or
mhm.
rental style uh,
Type of building. Yeah.
that building, yeah. So that's when you consider building ADUs. But that's not specifically when you do live on your property and you kind of manage it, but it's more like a hotel owner rather than
Got it.
family building an ADU for their relative.
Got
Um,
it.
and also in Europe, a lot of parents, a lot of families live more together, right? So it's
Which is
especially
kind of like what we're hoping people do here, right? With this whole
right.
concept. I think 50%, a lot of people think that most ADUs are only built for rentals, but they're not. A lot of them are also being built for elderly parents or high school kids, college kids, homeschool offices. So, yeah, I think eventually we will see that theme, hopefully, where families can coexist and co live together in that same lot, rather than the kids moving far away because they can't afford to tap into the LA market. So I'm that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I think it doesn't just solve an affordability issue, but also sort of where we're at culturally. I'm sure you already know the cultural differences between Europe and here, but that's awesome. I mean, I'm glad to hear that out there, that's kind of the way that it's being implemented. And I think we'll see that here eventually, especially in places like LA. Now, with your investments, it says here you do invest in Spain. Tell us a little bit about that journey and
Mhm.
kind of what your thoughts are investing possibly here in the States too.
I first heard about investment properties when my friends started working at a
Mhm.
company to sell those to foreigners. A lot of Americans, I think people from Middle East, Russians and Israelis in Portugal. And there was a big program about golden visas in Portugal, etc. And that was got really popular at some point. But at that point of my life, I didn't have cash, so I was like, okay, this is somewhere
Right.
really far and really distant future. But funnily enough, a couple of years later, when I just happened to travel, and when you travel, for me as an architect, I guess it's my professional thing, always
Yeah.
properties, right? And you have those firms that have their hanging that, hey, there's an apartment for sale, and you check out the
Oh,
price.
trust me, I'm not an architect, but I still do that too.
Right.
Yeah.
You work in that industry,
Yeah,
so
I get you on that for sure.
you understand the itch.
Yeah.
And you check always those prices, and I was shocked because you could buy a 3-bedroom apartment for 150,000, and
Wow.
that's a no brainer. You can calculate your mortgage, but especially if the interest rate in Spain is extremely low, it can be anywhere from 3.5 to even 2.5. So
Wow.
compared to the US, it's very different. It's way cheaper. And if you know how to utilize those financial mechanisms and you understand that, hey, this is a 3-bedroom apartment that you can rent for 1,000 euros per month, and the mortgage is costing you 250 euros per month, it's easy money.
Right, right. And
So
so that's what you currently have in Spain, and they're
yeah,
all you're renting those out, long-term
long
tenants?
term, long term, because it's obviously less maintenance. It's
Of
easier.
course,
Yeah, I
right.
hire a property manager. I don't have to hire a cleaner. I don't have
And
to.
there's a lot of, I don't know all the investment tax and strategies, but I think even as an American, like let's say I wanted to invest in Spain, they're pretty like easy to work with, right? From what I've heard. Mm.
Exactly. Yeah, the process is a little bit complicated in terms of you have to obtain a Spanish taxpayer number because you need to pay the property tax there. But apart from that, the process is fairly straightforward. The only problem that I think people encounter is that they don't know the Spanish market. So that's why
Right.
want to work with somebody local who knows in what area, in what city, where
Mhm.
are underappreciated, because first city comes to, oh, Barcelona, but it's a market which already kind of passed the point of being really attractive. And now it's super attractive. So meaning it's way more expensive and your margins are much tighter.
Very strong. Yeah, I mean, it's like everything. Even here in LA, understanding hyperlocal markets is crucial. Understanding different cities and how each city works with, whether it's buying a property or trying to build. Luckily with ADUs, there's a statewide ordinance that all these local counties are supposed to follow. Not everybody follows the rules, but we hope that they can, and we're able to reference the code. But yeah, this is really good insight to anyone wanting to invest in Europe. That's definitely a possibility for us. But even tapping into the market here, I'm assuming now you seeing how things work here. Obviously, the rates are a little bit higher right now. It may not make all the sense, but I think with strategies like SB 1211, right, where you can add
Mm-hmm.
units. I have somebody, one of my friends right now, he's working on, I believe it's 350 units up in Sacramento, and there's 5 parcels on that 300 unit. So they're building about 40 ADUs to that
Makes
300 unit. That makes a lot of sense, right? And that may not be the first investment you start off with, but you definitely see the potential of like, okay, maybe I can buy a duplex or a fourplex. And even though it might be at 1.2 because you can't really find anything less than that in California. Um, 1.2 for, let's say, a 4 unit or a 2 unit even, but you can add up to four, right? Or you have an 8 unit, you can add up to eight. Now the financials make sense, even though the rates are pretty high. And this goes for anybody who wants to purchase it or who has existing multifamily. So that's a big topic that we're kind of focusing on, along with,
Mhm.
everybody who's being displaced right now in LA. So
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard, but yesterday there was a city council meeting and they wanted to kind of allow to surpass the city planning if a
yes,
licensed contractor or an architect signs off a project, which kind of fast to make the
streamline the
process
process.
way
Which
faster.
hopefully they do, because that would really help at least not create all this backlog of submittals. It kind of helps push all the submittals in a proper time frame and quicker time frame. So I hope that they do, but we'll have to see what that looks like in the next 6 months, right? And yeah, I mean, if anybody is interested in design services, what are some of the walk people through the process of them wanting to reach out to you and how they can connect with you, and you kind of go from there just so they know, and then I'll make sure to add your information here too.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's pretty easy to contact me. I usually leave my number. I answer my phone.
Oh, and
um,
not to mention your newsletter too. So I forgot to mention, here's what I forgot to mention. Her entrepreneurial journey has been featured in Forbes. I forgot that little detail. And she connects people through her tech newsletter, which I'm a part of, by the way. So,
oh, that's cool. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, things in life sometimes happen pretty randomly. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
if you want to contact me, I'm available on my phone, on my email. You can check out my work on the website. And that's pretty easy. In terms of getting a project, I usually have a free consultation with a potential client to kind of understand their needs and tell them, hey, I can help you with this and this, with this I cannot, or this is not my expertise, I can refer you to somebody else. I
Right.
work with contractors who I personally trust. So this is like also how I can help you. However, if you do have your own contractor, I'm open to that. For me, the most important is that people don't get ghosted or screwed over, because I've heard some horror stories happening, unfortunately, on the
Right. Oh, trust me, I've talked about that a lot on this podcast. I even did a full episode talking about companies that have scammed people and how to look out for some of these contractors. Because I think what happens is, obviously, the ADU wave is a big hot topic right now, and it's going to continue to be for the next 5 to 10 years because we're in a housing shortage.
Mhm.
So with that comes a lot of people who don't have good intentions in doing business the right way. And I think half of that is contractors with bad intentions. The other half is wannabe entrepreneurs who think that they understand construction and budgeting, but they really don't. So they tell you that they can build an ADU for 100,000, and they don't anticipate change orders or costs or inflation or tariffs, right? Like they don't give themselves a buffer to really be realistic with the price and timeframes. So you're going to see that a lot in the next couple of months. A lot of contractors who didn't budget correctly and are going to want to upcharge your ADU in order for them to break even or even make a profit. Or if they upcharge you and you can't pay for that difference, then they're just going to leave your job halfway done. So it's very important to vet the people that you work with. I personally know a lot of people, but I only work with two or three at a time. And I always tell clients too, when they're working with a different designer and builder who don't work for the same company, make sure that they communicate well, right? That they work well together, that they vet each other, because I'm sure you came across those scenarios where people are like, oh, I need help with the plans. Can you do the design for me? But I have my own contractor. I have my uncle who does construction, right?
Yeah,
And you're
that's
like, let me talk to your uncle and let me see if we're even a good fit here. So That's always a hot topic that people don't consider.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, when people want to have a quote or a bid from a contractor, not even having the plans, or
Yeah.
showing them plans that you draw by hand on a piece of paper with squares, like
No, that's not gonna work.
it's not going to work. They don't expect the quote to be the same. They can give you a rough estimate, but it is a rough estimate. It's
Right.
not realistic. And also, once you start tapping into a specific site, you can find out that, oh, you need a survey or land surveyor, or you need this, or you have um,
Hmm.
a fire hydrant next to you, and
Right.
those sort of things that make it complicated. So,
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think you're going to kill it. I mean, I really am supporting you, especially as a woman in business. I always enjoy having conversations with people who are in the same circles. I love that you network because that's my main focus, right? That's how I grow most of my business. It really allows me to get to know people on a deeper level, which shows you like face to face is still the number one way to connect with people. So yeah, that's how we met, guys. Make sure you guys come to my event, which is happening March 5th in Huntington Beach. I'll be sharing details on that. Hopefully, Daria will be there again, and maybe you
I'm
guys can
going to
connect
be.
with her. Yeah, maybe you guys can connect with her in person. And yeah, make sure you guys reach out to her. Any final thoughts or anything you want to share before we close out?
Um, Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate you taking the time and having me here. And also, thank you for making this happen. Thank you for your events. I met a lot of interesting people there, some of them
Right.
potential clients. So it's really cool what you're doing. Keep up the good work.
I appreciate that so much. And it means a lot coming from you. I know you do a lot of networking yourself, so you understand the struggle. But but it's good. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I look forward to seeing you at the next meetup, and I look forward to us just establishing a long-term relationship and connection. So, thank you so much, Daria. Make sure you guys follow her, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.